This week, a taste of Europe comes from these fabulous vineyards in northern Portugal. If you've ever been to Portugal, the chances are it will have been to the Algarve on the Med. While I was lot of sat on the beach or playing golf on the golf course, these guys here are busting it up all summer and all winter to produce lovely port wine. For the past 300 years, the port trade has been dominated by British merchants. One of the best known port-making families is the Symingtons. They've been out here for 5 generations. These days, Paul Symington and his family are all still hands-on. So, Paul, this is where the wine starts, basically.
We've just started picking the last day or two because we've got ideal ripeness here.
Roughly speaking, each vine produces enough grapes for 1 bottle of port. It's a miracle that anything grows here at all. For months on end, there's no rain, and these vines' roots go down some 20 feet to find moisture. But the irony is the harder these vines struggle, the better the end wine will be. I mean, look at this stuff. How does anything grow in this?
It's critical that we have good weather right now, and it can go horribly wrong. I mean, if the clouds come over, we've had years where it's been disaster, just pouring with rain. It's miserable for the pickers. Eventually you get rot setting in. So, you know, it is in the lap of the gods. Picking by machine is completely out of the question on this terrain. There's a famous story of a guy who came up on the train with a machine to pick, and he got out of the station at Pinhão, looked around and went, oh my God, and got back on the train and went down again.
A lot of guys working around us, Paul. How long does your harvest take?
We have about 4 weeks here, starting about the 20th of September and going on till sort of mid-October.
And that's it?
And that's it. What we're doing here is we're just literally taking the final selection. This is a very expensive process. We've got 4 guys here taking all the leaves out, any rotten grapes. Luckily, there are none this year. And this is a prime vineyard. So you see all the grapes coming in perfect condition. There's no rot at all.
When the grapes were picked, they had to be crushed immediately. And as they say, the oldest ways are the best. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Hey! Go! Hey! As soon as the grapes are crushed, they begin fermenting. No sugar's added, it's a criminal offence here. They don't even add yeast. There's plenty in the grape skins to get the fermentation going. They've been making wine like this for hundreds and hundreds of years. These giant granite tanks are called lagars. The whole point of crushing by foot is to squash the grapes, not the bitter seeds and stems. These guys have been at it 2 hours. I've done about 15 minutes. I'm out of breath. And I'm fairly fit. It's like being on a route march. It's really cold. So in actual fact, when I thought I was going to sweat like mad, it's fantastic.
There's 2 hours of treading, and then at the end you have a very traditional thing, goes back over 200 years, which is called liberty. The song is long live liberty, long live us, long live the boss, and long live the girls. And then the music starts and everybody dances, and we have 2 more hours where you grab the nearest prettiest girl and you dance the night away.
Good, huh? Yeah. It's like petrol. It's just gone 10:30. They've been out about 4 hours, so I'm really worn out, so I'm going to go have a glass of port off to bed. This spectacle could soon vanish in the valley of the Douro. The Symingtons will come up with a robot and make all these wonderful people redundant someday.
This is basically the future as far as we're concerned. We wanted to make more wine treading, but there are just not enough people in the valley to do that. So basically we designed these to mimic exactly the traditional treading that you've seen. To our amazement and surprise, these are actually making better wine than the traditional lagars. And look at that fabulous colour. Isn't that fantastic? That is good wine.
Wow, look at that.
It's not rocket science. You just see something like that and you know that that's great wine being made because the colour's so good.
But look at the fermentation, look at that bubbling away there. They used to ship the port wine to England for maturing, but Paul's ancestors discovered the cool coastal climate of Oporto was just the job. So Paul, what happens next?
Well, when we get to the right degree of sweetness has been fermented out of the wine, we run it down into the big vats that you saw, and we add brandy. 20% brandy to 80% wine.
This may sound a daft question, Paul, but why do you add brandy to wine, effectively?
The wine in 200 years ago wasn't very well made, and you'd have all sorts of odd things happening in the barrels as they were taken by ship to England. So they added a little bit of brandy to stabilise the wine, and that got quite favourable response by the English.
So it's actually almost a preservative, really.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the Douro, one of the greatest rivers in the world, and it's huge. Up this way you go to Spain, and this way is the west coast of Portugal. And originally, the wine was made over there, packed into casks and rolled down the hill onto small boats. It was then taken 3 days that way to Oporto, where it was matured, but even shooting rapids on the way. I don't know how they did it, but they did. So Paul, the wine's arrived from the vineyard, we're here in Oporto now. What happens next?
This is the aging. So we've made the wines, and here in this more moderate climate down on the coast, we put the wine out into these barrels, and the slow process of aging starts. And this is where the wine actually begins to evolve. The brandy integrates well with the wine, and we do a lot of tasting here. We have to assess the wines to see when they're ready for drinking.
It's really impressive. How many barrels are here?
In this particular old cellar, there are 4,000 barrels.
And how many bottles does that equate to?
Each barrel has 59 cases, and there are 12 bottles in a case, so it's 59 times 12.
Times 4,000.
Times 4,000, exactly.
Wow.
Basically, Phil, there are two types of port. Wood-aged, aged in the barrels behind us.
See here, yep.
Exactly. And then this is a completely different wine, because this has been aged in bottle just when it's 2 years old, which is a vintage port, which is this.
This is the big stuff, the big guns.
Yeah.
How old is this one?
This is 65.
65?
1965. I mean, that is classic, great vintage port. Soft smell of roses and a really beautiful aroma. You can't get that in any other wine in the world.
It's nearly 40 years old.
40 years old.
I'm going to drink that one because it's too nice to spit in there. Wow. And this is the finished product, grown with care and attention and love, in impossible conditions. For me, a vintage port is for life, not just Christmas. Wow.